All right, today we are talking about debt, not theory, real life. If you're trying to keep up with the payments, worried about your mortgage, or thinking, I can't keep doing this and this episode is for you, I'm here with Zach. He helps people figure out the best next step, consolidation, or consumer proposal, or bankruptcy. This stuff here about, but most people don't understand. We are going to keep this simple, practical, and direct. And Zach has so much expertise in this subject, and he helps so many people to come out of a debt and tackle the debt. And I'm going to ask real questions. Zach, I know that you have the expertise in this subject and you help so many people to control on their debt. And can you tell me, because most people don't understand what is the difference between the bankruptcy, consumer proposal, sometimes debt consolidations. Can you elaborate the basics so that people can understand that?
Sure. Well, the first thing you need to know is all three of those are actually forms of consolidation. So what's consolidation? To consolidate something means to just put it together. If you have a little kid and you say, "Hey, I want you to consolidate all your toys into that box," you probably wouldn't use the term consolidate with a 3-year-old, but still, you're putting everything in one box. So to consolidate, usually when someone says consolidation, what it really should mean is a consolidation loan. So that is, somebody owes money on credit cards, loans, lines of credit, taxes, whatever, and they go to the bank or a lender, any lender, and say, "Hey, I need a loan to pay this off. Hopefully the interest rate is less." And not only is it simplifying things because you have one bill to pay, but ideally, if the interest rate is lower and the terms are more favorable, the monthly payment will be less. However, when people say the word consolidation, I often I think of a lot of my Filipino clients who say, "I need consolidation," and in this case, they're referring to a consumer proposal. You are consolidating. I think people use the term, and apologies for the crappy Filipino accent, but people use the term, I think, because it's just less intimidating. But what's the difference then between consolidation loan is just that, it's a loan, it's outside the act, it's not what's termed as restructuring.
Mm-hmm.
Restructuring is the bankruptcy and the proposal. That's something where you're going through a formal process, meaning you're using the law to seek debt. You're seeking debt relief through the law, the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. The simplest way to explain it without going on and on is a bankruptcy is a formula, a proposal is a contract. So a bankruptcy, they look at your income, they look at your assets, and based on what you own and what you earn and the size of your family and this and that, they come up with a number that says, look, this is what you have to pay monthly, whether it's 9 months, 21 months, 36 months. And this is what you have to give to the trustee. So a guy called a bankruptcy trustee or a LIT, licensed insolvency trustee, will take the assets, or you have to compensate them for them. So it's basically, it says, look, based on what we see, here's what you have to pay. And if something changes, that will change too. A proposal says, well, look, I owe you this. Mm-hmm. If I go bankrupt, you're going to get that. So why don't you take that over 5 years, 0% interest, and have a nice day, right? So that's the short, simplified version of the differences. A lot of people think they're the same just because they affect credit, but they're not even close to the same.
Right. So what you're saying is consumer proposal versus bankruptcy, and is depending on their situation. So if somebody comes to you. Mm-hmm. Based on their situation, so what is the first action you are trying to take get it as a consumer proposal, I believe, before go to bankruptcy?
So excellent question. So we're not necessarily trying to direct them into one or the other. The first thing I have to do is ask them a bunch of questions. So I have to get personal, because I have to learn about their situation. What I'm effectively doing when I'm quizzing them is I'm trying to figure out what would happen if that person went bankrupt, because that's the floor. That's the basis that determines everything else. To give you an absurd example, but it does happen. Let's say a guy owes $20,000. I quiz him and I find out that in a bankruptcy he's worth $50,000. Well, he doesn't need me. He doesn't need a bankruptcy. That's where I say, hey, things are looking okay here. Have you tried to get a loan? Have you tried going to friends and family? Have you tried just muscling your way through this? Sometimes I'll even do a budget with them on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the people I'm seeing, though, are insolvent. Insolvent's just a fancy way of saying legally broke. Sounds better. In that case, I'm looking at what would happen if they went bankrupt. And then from there, I can say, well, look, if you go bankrupt, here's what it looks like. If you were to do a proposal, here's what it looks like. Most people want to avoid bankruptcy for a whole host of reasons, both reasonable and some just purely emotional. That's fine. But it's not like someone walks in, I'm like, let's do a proposal, or let's do one of these. We have to determine it. Funny enough, today I've already met with 3 people, 2 proposals, 1 bankruptcy. Why? Well, if you want to let me elaborate, I can go into it, but the different reasons, different circumstances for each.
So then, as a consumer, somebody walks into your office, they don't know which direction to go, so you are the one directing them based on their situation.
Well, I would say in about 80% of cases, they have no idea. And that's not fault that's not a fault in their case. They don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Another 20% have some inkling or some education, or maybe they've already met with someone who explained it to them.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, my job is to not only reinforce the correct things they know, but it's also to try to break the wrong things they know. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of interpretations in the industry. There's a lot of, I think friends mean well, but they get everything wrong. They just do. The television gets stuff wrong. Google, ChatGPT gets it wrong. It's not right. It's a robot, folks. It's not a person. And people get things wrong. You think the robot's going to do any better? Anyways, so that's the other part of it. But mostly it's education. And if I do pat myself on the back, one of the most common comments we've had over the years on the positive side, of course, is this was the first time someone really took the time to explain everything to me. Mm-hmm. We've had situations, it doesn't happen a lot, but we've had situations where I'll meet with someone, they'll say, look, I did a proposal a few years ago and it failed, it annulled. And I'll ask them about the circumstances, and they'll say, well, I didn't even realize what I signed. I thought I signed a loan. It wasn't a loan. Now people don't always have the best hearing, mm-hmm. But in a lot of cases, it's this, this quickie shuffle, like, look, you can do this, you can do that. What do you want to do? And I don't know. I don't understand the mechanics of it. I don't understand how it affects me. I don't understand why this may be better than that in my given circumstance. Mm-hmm. So, a big part of my job is trying to make sure people understand what they're getting into and how it works.
Yeah, it's a great explanation. And so sometimes I think I have seen, say as example, if a homeowner, so if sometimes they lost their job, maybe someone in the family get ill, and they try to use all the resources that they have, maybe they tap into all these savings, then they tap into their line of credit cards, right? So they are fighting and fighting and fighting, somehow keep the mortgage payment up to date. But then that also sometimes, they're not able to cope up because they got all the resources possible, right? Mm-hmm. So now they have a lot of debt. They borrow from friends and family, and they behind the mortgage as well, right? Now banks step in, they take over and all the, So what point they should decide, I have to go and get support and, at least go for consumer or whatever appropriate, right?
Sure. There's no hard and fast rule, and there's no magic number. I would say what ultimately drives people, and when should I seek help? What ultimately drives people into the loving arms of someone like me isn't the debt itself; it's the cost of the debt. Okay, the debt is just a number. It's a big scary number, but it's just a number. Mm-hmm. What kills people is the cost of the debt. So if you owe $50,000, let's say on credit cards alone, well, depending on the breaks, mm-hmm. that's going to cost you anywhere from $900 a month up to like $1,500 a month just to keep these guys at bay. So if you notice that, let's say you make X dollars a year. Well, if you have to pay the credit cards, and now the only way to be able to afford everything, to afford rent, to afford food, to afford the car, is to use the credit. Well, at that point, you're spiraling. In other words, you're unable to pay all your bills on your income alone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's usually what drives, because people you hopefully realize, wait a second, I can budget all day.
Mm-hmm.
I can cut this, I can cut that, I can, live in a cardboard box, I cannot eat. I'm not getting out of this. No amount of gumption or, stick-to-itiveness is going to get you through this.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens is, different for everyone. Unfortunately, what also drives people into our office is just they finally max out. The human capacity for procrastination is extraordinary. We all suffer from it to a degree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows smoking is bad for them. Now get them to stop. You ever tried? It's not easy. But that's ultimately what does it. So I would say, if people are struggling with debt right now, I guess I would ask them, well, look, if you stopped using the credit cards, the lines of credit, everything right now, and just did everything you could to try to pay it down, could you even do it given your present income? And if the answer is no, well, you need help. If the answer is maybe, but it's kind of tight, it's still worth asking. And I would say the other thing that triggers people is, before someone gets to someone like me, they'll go the traditional route, which is first they'll do nothing. They'll just try to work it out or hope it goes away. That's very common. They'll go to the triple F, which is friends, family, and fools. And then they'll try to sell off assets. And
so you said friends, family, and fools?
Yeah, the triple F. Most people would rather owe the bank than their uncle. I don't blame them. You have to see your uncle, on the holidays. The bank's just a big faceless company that you don't care about, right? They're scary, but you don't have to sit down to dinner with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll try to sell assets. If none of that works, that's where you start getting into, well, I'll look at a loan first. I'll look at, this. I'll look at that. And usually they end up in our place.
And as you said that, since everyone was procrastinating, so if someone procrastinated that long, it means maybe they lost so much equity in the house along the way, because in this kind of market, the property prices also sometimes decreasing, right?
Yeah, well, they'll also use the equity in the house. And look, that's understandable, because if someone has substantial equity in their house, I'm not going to be able to do much for them anyways, because remember, everything's based on the bankruptcy scenario. Right. In a bankruptcy, your home equity is up for grabs, right? So if you owe $50,000, but you have $200,000 of equity in your home, you don't need me. There's not much I can do there. You want a mortgage broker to, ideally suck that out, or you want to sell the house or do whatever you can. The problem, of course, is it doesn't always solve the problem, especially when we're dealing with second mortgages and stuff like that. It tends to just give you a little extra oxygen. So it's unfortunate. I have my mortgage agent license and I barely use it, partly because I'm working 3,500 hours a year doing my regular business. But in a lot of cases, I felt like, because I'm dealing with strictly people in debt, I felt like I wasn't really helping them. I was just, this will keep you alive for another year before you have to come back, and I'll just like that. It's like, you're welcome. I don't know. It make you feel so good.
It's pretty interesting. And Zach, so when you said that if someone goes for a consumer proposal, so even they have a lot of equity, so that won't affect for that consumer proposal. But if they go for bankruptcy, it might be a problem because they have equity.
It affects both, but it's treated differently. So in a bankruptcy, your equity is up for grabs. They're going to say, look, you have to give us that equity somehow. How do you do it? You either have to refinance, sell the house, or come up with the money, right? And depending on the trustee, sometimes they'll say, well, look, let's settle on this number. Let's agree that this is good and see if the creditor's fine with it. So there's the actual act of grabbing the equity. In a proposal, they don't take the house. but they look at what the equity is. And so if you owe a certain amount of money, remember what we offer is based on the bankruptcy value. The more equity you have, the more you're worth in a bankruptcy, the more you have to offer in a proposal, because the proposal has to be better than the bankruptcy, and not just by a little. It's got to be sweet enough that the creditor will say, yeah, I'll take that instead of just opting for the bankruptcy.
But if somebody is in that challenge, maybe they already lost the job, they may not able to refinance and take the equity out, right? So how they are going to grab some equity in that case if they cannot go through the refinance regular process to get the money out?
Well, private lenders usually just care about the equity, but that's another thing. At that point, that's where we have to get real. And it's not always a pleasant conversation, because this happens a few times a week. It just happened yesterday. I had someone, they hadn't lost their job, but their income was diminished considerably. The household income, not only theirs, but their spouses. And they do own a house. And I said, listen, and they had done a little research.
Okay.
They're like, well, you can get me a really good deal, right? Because now I'm making very little money. And I said, theoretically, yes. But how are you going to pay this? You know what I mean? Because right now, they aren't even making enough to cover the mortgage. Forget the debt payment. Forget even gasoline in the car and food. You can't pay the mortgage. And I said, you doing a proposal, that doesn't help you. You have to live with that, And besides, I have to make it look like you can actually afford your life. And, there's things on a budget that are judgment calls. What do you spend on groceries? Well, that's nobody really knows that. It's up and down. But your mortgage is what it is, Your car payment is what it is. Your insurance is what it is. There's no getting around. And you can't just, oh, yeah, my mortgage. I have 6 tenants in my house. Doesn't work. So in that, they're like, well, what do we do? And that's where I have to drop the bomb on them and say, I think you should sell the house. Oh, but I don't want to sell the house. I understand. Nobody wants to sell the house. And it's a bad market right now. But I'll leave that up to you. But what's the alternative? We have very much I want my cake and eat it too in the culture, and I have to break some hearts sometimes, but at the same time, I have a conscience, and I can't tell someone, oh yeah, everything will be just fine. No, it won't. Not if you don't want me to operate on you if you can't even, get into the operating table, in the first place.
So you have to tell the truth.
The truth will set you free. It won't always make you happy, and it'll often piss you off. Fortunately, I'm 6'3", 215, so I can hold my own. My wife just gave me a look.
Yes, I guess that. Now, say what you are saying is, if somebody is not able to pay the current mortgage payment and other insurances, and trying to conciliate debt will not help them because their income is not enough to even pay for the current mortgage?
The budget has to be sound first. Right. Even a bankruptcy has a cost to it, right? So, I mean, to give you a different side of an extreme, but maybe with a happier ending, this has happened before, but I recall one lady in particular, she owed about 70, 80 grand. It was a lot. She was a senior citizen, CPP, OAS. She doesn't get that much. She lives with family. And even then, a bankruptcy is going to cost her $200 a month for 9 months. Okay. And that's actually gone up since then because the trustees were losing money on that. So now you've got like 250, 275, 300. It's all over. And even that was going to be a burden on her. And she's in her 70s and stuff. And I looked at her and I said, can you change your phone number? What? I said, can you change your phone number? Like, yeah, why? And I said, well, look, you're on CPP and OAS. They can call you, they can hound you, they can harass you, they can kill your credit. You're looking to get married, have kids, buy a house. Like, I'm not trying to, mock her, but it's like you're at a different stage of life. You're just trying to live your life. And I said, what are they going to do? So let's say they sue you. Okay, and they win. They've got a judgment. Terrific. What are you going to do? Take her house? She doesn't have one. Take her car? Nobody wants it and she doesn't have a car. You're going to garnish her? No one will garnish CPP and OAS except for CRA. So I said, the only thing left is they can drive you crazy on the phone, so change your phone number. I said, I think if you can muscle up the ability to do a bankruptcy, you should do it. She was really against, she didn't like the idea of bankruptcy. Okay, what can I do? So I said, change your phone number. That doesn't work for everyone. But again, if I put her in a bankruptcy, she's dead. She's dead. So that doesn't happen often.
So without giving the medication, you advise them don't do nothing, just stay.
In that particular case, yes. Other times, I just got off the phone with someone. It was a Zoom meeting, actually. We meet in the office, but some people prefer virtual. And it was the opposite effect, where this lady actually makes good money, but she's made some very bad choices. Mm-hmm. Very bad. And I said, look, your budget is ridiculous. And not only that, she's self-employed. So, of course, her accountant has gone to town. And instead of her making this, it looks like she makes that. And I said, congratulations. You'd be a bit of a sarcastic jerk at times. But I said, congratulations. You've done a fabulous job of reducing your taxes. Unfortunately, you now make less than your monthly mortgage payment. Mm-hmm. So somebody's gonna this doesn't make sense. You can't alter one thing and expect the other to not be impacted. It's going to happen, right? And I said, so here's the problem. Mm-hmm. You want to do a proposal. If I use your current income as it shows on your taxes, the creditors are going to balk at it. They're going to say, how do you pay all? And I can't fudge your mortgage numbers. They're going to say, how do you pay this? Conversely, if I show the proper income, now you're going to pay a fortune more because you've set yourself up with the 2 cars and this and that and so forth. And then, probably mortgage fraud. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's there. Something people really need to understand is when you cheat, cheaters never win. You really don't. I know it seems like you are because you might get away with it for a while. Sooner or later, you're going to get kicked in the balls. And if you don't have balls, another part of your body, whatever. I don't know if you have to edit that out, but it's just, you can probably see me getting a little agitated because I'm floored by the things people do. You want to see. you do a little bit of cash income, and nobody knows about. Okay, God, everyone does that. $2,000, $3,000. If CRA is listening, I'm sorry, but people do it.
Right.
But $60,000, and you report that you made $10,000 last year, and you're driving around in a Mercedes.
Yes.
Even drug dealers pay taxes.
For some.
So write that down.
Yes. I'll make sure to write it down. Yes.
Yeah, it's I don't get it. It just if you're gonna lie well. Don't lie at all. But if you're going to lie. Right. Zach, why are you late to the meeting? I'm sorry. The car wouldn't start. I got every red light. Some idiot blocked the intersection. Right. Am I lying? Well, maybe. I don't. There's no way to prove it. Zach, why are you late? It's not my fault. It was the tornado. Right. Well, which one's more plausible?
Yes. Now, Zach, I think I know you so long, so I understand you're a very animated character. I like. Huh?
Never mind. It's okay.
I think when I met you, you had nice hair. I think, right?
I haven't had hair for a while. I was probably 10 pounds lighter and fewer wrinkles, but and I didn't. These glasses come and go, but I don't know. Maybe the fringe was larger, but
yes.
The baldness was an affliction early on. That's why people think I haven't aged. I was pre-aged. People, they're like, man, when I last saw you, you were 30 years old, and you haven't aged a bit. I'm like, yeah, I looked like this when I was 30 years old. So
that's true. No, Zach, I think sometimes people go to that the cash money and all those places to grab quick cash, right? Mm-hmm. So what are the worst scenarios that you have seen that they're paying up high taxes or not taxes, sorry, interest rate, what is the maximum you have seen for people who got?
When it comes to the payday loan guys, I mean, it when you average it out, it can be over 500%. I mean, it's pretty nuts. And, in their defense, the payday loan company's defense, and I can't believe I'm actually defending them, at least they don't break thumbs. They'll break your spirit, but they won't break thumbs. But the challenge with payday loans is, why are you getting a payday loan in the first place? You're desperate. Okay. And if you've never been that desperate, it's hard to understand. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky in my life. I haven't been in that position, but I can certainly imagine. I've met enough people who were. It's nasty, but yeah, the pain back is such that if someone tells me, well, I have a loan with Money Mart, my next question is, how many payday loans do you have? Because it's very rare, unless they just got it, it's very rare to see one. Because if you get one payday loan, you need a second to pay the first, and then you need a third to pay the second. So the record, if memory serves, was somewhere around 22, 23 different payday loans, each one paying the loan before it. Because once you get on the tracks, there's no getting off until you throw in the towel and do a bankruptcy or a proposal. The good news is we've been able to help these people. But yeah, when you look at the interest rate, I mean, forget payday loans even. Easy Financial, 47.99%. Or is it 46? Much better. Fairstone, 36.99%. I mean, that alone, my God, that'll destroy you. The Money Marts I've seen in the 50s. And when you extrapolate it out, when you extrapolate, sorry, my wife's making a gesture. We're not in a professional studio here. When you extrapolate it out, yes, some of them can get into the hundreds of percents. Because if memory serves, like if you get a payday loan, what was it? Like if you borrow $200 or something, you have to pay back the $200 plus another $60, something like that, and within a matter of weeks, it's like, whoa, it's a lot. It doesn't sound like much. It's only $20, or maybe it was $240, whatever it is, only $30, $20 per 100, but you're doing it fast, right?
Yeah.
And it's a constant. It's probably the greatest business in the world if you're a jerk. Part of the reason I got into this business was I was looking at different businesses and I saw the payday loan business and I thought, wow, that's the greatest business on earth if I want to go to hell. Prefer not to,
So you have seen 50+% interest from those guys?
Yeah.
Are you charging this?
I've seen crazy. In the last few years, I saw mortgage terms at 60 years, 70 years, just because when the interest rates went up, no one could afford anything. So they had a solution. We'll just extend your amortization to 70 years. Well, that solves the problem. Right.
If someone is keep on fighting, assuming that they own a home and they have a decent income, now something went wrong and that keep on fighting and fighting and fighting, and finally the bank take over, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that is this. Sometimes as you said, that procrastinating is so deep. Sometimes they are losing ton of equity because when bank take over, everything is out of your control.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes they cannot come to a mind that we want to take a decision, right? So, so sad to hear that. Yeah. So have you seen it? Have you seen a lot these days comparing to COVID time?
We're starting to see more. There was a bit of a ramp up after the lockdowns, and I thought, oh boy, here we go. And then it kind of petered out. Mm-hmm. And in the last few months, more and more, I'm seeing people who have to walk away from the house, or they really should. And it's not fun. It's not easy. But, the foreclosure process, it's a long process, and we can help people through it. Because one thing a lot of people don't realize is you don't have to leave the house right away. This is not a landlord-tenant situation. Yeah. Until a judge goes, and says, okay, it's not your house anymore. It's the bank's house. It's still your house.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to be jerks or anything, but I want people like, look, you can start looking for a place to live, but stop paying the mortgage. You want me to stop paying the mortgage? Yeah. You're already 3 months behind. Like, stop. They probably stopped at that point anyways. The bank won't even take a payment. But, I say to them, look, I'll show you how to stay here for another my record, not including the COVID, the lockdown times was 9 months. I kept someone in their house. Wait until they boot you. At that point, the mortgage is worth that. The house is that. That's the shortfall. We throw it into a bankruptcy or a proposal, but at least you're saving money and you have your first and last month's rent or, whatever it is you have to do. But that's the thing. A lot of people just leave and they don't realize they have to do that. Or, especially with second lenders, with private lenders, they'll say, but Zach, the private lender said if I don't pay, he's going to change the locks. And I say, good, you got a lawsuit on your hands. This is not a landlord situation. I say, he changes the locks. You smack him on the head, with a lawyer. Like, you can't do that. I think a lot of them know they can't do it, but they do it, but they say it anyways because they know it'll scare the person. But something I've noticed about private lenders is it seems the more money they have, the fewer brain cells they possess. They just happen to have a lot of money. Well, congratulations. I guess mom and dad did a great job, but they said, well, you got to work. So you figure this is your work. I'm being a real jerk today, but I can't help myself sometimes. You see some of these private lenders and how they, I always tell people if they do a proposal, I say, listen, your mortgage lender and your private lender are going to get a copy of this because they're entitled to see, they're a secured lender. And I say to them, there's a good chance your second mortgage guy is going to freak. Why? Well, he thinks he's not going to get paid. He's going to get paid. He's secured. He's not an unsecured creditor. Mm-hmm. But they don't know. Right? They go, they call their lawyer. The lawyer freaks out. It's nice to know they understand their business. It's.
But I think in Canada, I think what we have seen is power of sale, not the.
Either way, you're losing the house, and I suspect it's going to get worse. I don't say that with a grin. I say it with a genuine amount of sympathy, and unfortunately, I think the country's in a lot of trouble. I really do. And then the question is, this isn't even a debt question. At what point do you say to yourself, my God, I better sell the house now before it goes down even more? Nobody knows. Knows. But my favorite analogy is to say to people, hey, do you know what the richest city in America was in 1965? They're like, I don't know, New York, Chicago, LA. It was Detroit. How do you feel about that?
Today's a ghost town, right?
I haven't been there lately.
I crossed the border recently, not recently, last summer. That part,
Well, I believe at its peak it had over 2 million people. Now it's 800,000 or something. It just goes to show you can go from glitz and glamour to the poorhouse very quickly. Slow at first, then very fast.
That's true. Yeah, I think so. I think if somebody is buying a home, I think what they need is a proper financial analysis and take a decision based on the numbers, not based on the emotions. Otherwise, people stretch as much as they can. That's why most of the time people are in trouble, right? So,
well, there's that, and also something I've noticed in Toronto is for the longest time I couldn't figure out how are ordinary people able to buy a house in this city, because you have to be elite. Making a good living isn't really enough. And what I found was it was either A, mortgage fraud. Seen a lot of that. And, how do I know? Well, it's very simple. They tell me they bought the house 3 years ago, and I look at their taxes from 3 years ago, and they reported this much income, and all of a sudden, boom, you make this, and then that. And the other is people getting second mortgages right off the bat to finance the down payment. And in that case, in a lot of cases, they're misled. That's where a good realtor, like yourself, comes into play, because they're told, oh yeah, you qualify, everything's fine, and at the 11th hour, they're told, oh, you don't qualify, but they've already signed the contract, they've made a deposit, and they say, well, how short am I? About $260,000, but don't worry, I know a guy who can get you the loan. I'm like, really? And they're trapped. They're trapped.
Yeah.
People want their houses, but it's.
Because everyone's dream is to owning a home, especially if somebody's coming from outside as an immigrant, right? So
yeah, it sucks. I've told a few people, I've said to them, do you want to know why I own a house and you don't? And they look at me and they, no. And I say, because I was born in 1977 and you were born in 1988. That's why. Now, look, you can't let them off the hook completely, but honestly, it's, I call them generation screwed. And there's a lot of things that were outside their control. And since when, up until the last 10 years, since when in Canada did you have to be elite just to buy a freaking property? You know? And you go back to I always tell them, never apologize to a baby boomer. You know, Bill, I bought my first house when I was 23. Yeah, you bought it in 1974 when it was cheaper than borscht. And, but I had to pay 14% interest. Yeah, on $40,000. 14% on $40,000, 4% on $750,000. You tell me, you know?
Yes.
So it's very difficult. And I understand the desire, because the other thing that goes through people's heads is, well, if I don't buy a house now, I'll never own a house. And unlike the States where you have all these towns that are 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. Canada has what, 12 cities, 13 cities? Huge country, concentrated population in a few urban centers. It's hard, especially in GTA. It really is. And I do have a lot of sympathy, a lot of empathy for the folks born after a certain year, you know.
Especially immigrants, right? I mean, sometimes,
yeah, they've been sold a dream, and they really want to, like, it was mean. I had a guy once, I was trying to, you know, he really needed help with his debt, and he was concerned because it's going to affect his credit. And if it hurts my credit, I can't get a house. And I said, first of all, you can't get a house with $60,000 of debt either. Everyone thinks credit's the be all and end all. He said, but you don't understand, Zach. I need to be able to buy a house. I need to be able to stand in front of the house, take a picture, send it, and send it to my family so they can see me in front of the house. I said, you know what? That's terrific. There's a neighborhood behind my office. Stand in front of the house. I'll take a picture, send it. What? They're going to do a title search from Chile? Like, really? So he didn't go for it.
So I really enjoying your humor.
You gotta have it in this industry.
Yes, I know.
After 13 years, it's that, or I start sobbing.
Yes. Now, Zach, so okay, so when it comes to debt, people have debt. From the banks, then sometimes CRA arrears, student loan. So when someone go for consumer proposal, can they include all those debts?
Yeah. Well, so student loans has an exception to it. So I'll get to that saying. Taxes absolutely can be included. Personal tax, HST from a sole prop or a corp. The one tax you have to be a little leery of is source deductions from a sole proprietorship. If it's a corporation, not a big deal. If it's a sole proprietorship, now you have a problem, because that's preferred, and if you do a proposal, CRA is going to say, no, we want all the money and we want it all in 6 months. So if you have a sole prop and you have employees, pay the bloody deductions, okay? Because otherwise you're looking at a bankruptcy in most cases. OSAP can and has to be included. So the thing is, with any kind of formal proceeding, whether it's a bankruptcy or a proposal, all debts must be included. You can't say, well, just leave this one out. No, even OSAP has to go in. The challenge revolves around whether it's dischargeable. So with OSAP is only dischargeable through a proposal or a bankruptcy if you have been out of school for 7 years or more. Either you dropped out or you graduated. If it's been more than 7 years, terrific. It's like any other debt, disappears, provided everything goes through. If it's less than 7 years, there's kind of a double whammy, because the debt won't disappear, it survives, and you have to list it anyways. So, if somebody owes $30,000 on credit cards and they have a student loan of $10,000 and they've only been out of school for 5 years, well, I have to call it $40,000 in total. Now, that's not so bad. Okay, the OSAP survives, but at least you got rid of the nasty guys. One of the good things about OSAP is it's a fairly reasonable return payment. What happens sometimes, though, is you'll get someone who owes $30,000 and they'll say, well, I have an OSAP loan. Oh, when did you leave school? 2 years ago. How much do you owe? 50 grand. It's like, whoa. Now they have $80,000 of debt, but I can only impact the 30. And it's like, shoot, what did you study? It's a hell of a lab fee you got there. But most OSAPs less, but it happens. Every month, I'd say easily 10 to 20% of our clients have OSAP, whether it's $1,000 or $50,000,
Okay. So in a good proposal, how much you can reduce, say, dollar, you can bring it to 30 cents?
My record was just over 90 cents on the dollar, but that's rare. Okay. Before everyone goes, oh my God, Jesus. You can tell how old I am. I did this instead of this. So that's the record, but that tends to happen when you have really big debt, extenuating circumstances, and a little bit of good fortune. When someone walks to my office, my first objective, if I feel a proposal is possible, I'm trying to reduce by at least 70%. There's a lot of advertisements out there that say, cut your debt by 80. Yeah, it happens. Again, though, it depends on the circumstances and it depends on the size of the debt. The really awesome savings tend to kick in once you owe in the six figures. And the reason is just when it's lower debt, you can only go so low, right? If you owe $20,000, well, you're not getting an 80% reduction, okay? That would be $4,000. No one's going to take that. Or at least, well, if they do, I haven't seen it for years. If you owe $180,000, well, maybe we can get this down to 30. Well, that's more than 80% reduction. That's really nice, So it all comes down to the numbers. This happens all because we're like 98% referral. I haven't advertised for a year and a half, and I'll help one person get them the deal of the century, and then their friend will come and I'll say, okay, we can do this. They'll say, but that's only 64%. My friend was 82%. I'll say, you make more money than your friend. You have, stocks, and you also have a house. It changes things. Right. But they don't know that. So they just think it's an argument. They think Zach is speaking the magic words. I have no magic words whatsoever. I think I'm fairly eloquent. And when there's a counteroffer, I'm pretty good at writing the letters and explaining things and so forth. But there is no magic. You will accept $84 cents on, 16 cents on the dollar. You will reduce the debt by this much. I have spoken. Not that persuasive.
But I think there are guys that promoting, I think they says that non-profit organizations, right? So are they really working for consumers or they're working for the lenders?
They're working for the lenders. They'll argue otherwise. I really don't care. Come and get me. So first of all, So what you're referring to is what's known as credit counseling. In the past, there were also debt poolers, but I think the debt poolers have gone the way of the dodo. But what they're doing is the not-for-profit credit counselors. First of all, not-for-profit does not mean free. People hear not-for-profit, it sounds, oh, it's nice. No, they're still making a fortune. They're making more than me, but they're just not showing a profit. What do? You pay out salaries and office space and stuff. Which is fine. They're allowed to make money, but ultimately they're registered as charities. So what happens is the bank will usually send you there because they don't want you to go bankrupt. You'll be crying them and go, oh, I might have to go bankrupt. They're like, oh, you don't want to do that. Go talk to the not-for-profit credit counselor. And they'll set up a plan where they don't cut the debt, but if you owe 50, you're going to pay back 50 over 50 months at 0 to 5% interest. Well, even without interest, that's $1,000 a month. Now add their fee, you're looking at $1,100, $1,200, whatever it might be per month. Most people can't even afford it. So they end up crapping out. Every year we'll get a few people who went through the program and I'll look at what they're paying. It's just like, oh, what are you kidding me? And it's pretty astonishing.
But the reason the bank is sending because that is That is how they play the game, right?
They're getting the money back. And now I might mess this up, but my understanding too is not only are they getting all the money back, the person's still taking a hit on their credit. And apparently, if the credit counselor is able to get all or at least a certain amount of money back, they get a bonus. The RBC or RBC TD, any of these banks can then write off the bonus as a charitable donation. No charity involved at all. It's like, you're not, who are you helping? I mean, God.
So are they? Is it legal?
Totally illegal.
Legal? Okay.
If the bank does it, it has to be legal, right?
Yes, that's true. Yes, but
when you do it, it's illegal. When they do it, that's okay.
But see, the consumers is actually unaware of the solutions out there, right? That's the sad part.
Sorry, I'm just doing one thing here. There we go. Yeah, I mean, people don't know, and because they're wholeheartedly supported and backed by the creditors, they have huge budgets, right? So if you've ever been stuck behind a bus and seen an advertisement, there's a good chance it's a credit counselor, Credit Canada, Total Debt Free, Total Credit, Total Debt Solutions. I can't remember. I don't. In my old age, I've stopped paying attention to the competition. Because I just figure I do my thing, I get my market share, and no business school is going to want me. But hey, what can I say?
Yeah, I think we can go on and on. I know that it's a very interesting subject, and you have a lot of energy, lot of knowledge. I think I met you.
I got a lot of beefs, community.
Yeah. So I think let's do another session in the coming, in the future. I think I have so much.
So
I think this is really helpful,
and that's fantastic.
Because most of the people out there, I think they're vulnerable. Unfortunately, lack of understanding about money, the support, the systems, right? So every vultures come and take. Some people work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, right? So sometimes even they whatever built for last 20 years gone in one mistake. So what do you want to say? At the same time, talk about you and your company and
thank you for that, and thanks for having me. I do appreciate it, and as you can tell, I can talk. That's a good and bad thing. As for the company's 4 pillars. 4 pillars been around since the turn of the century, but I've been doing this since 2012. I think we've helped now 3,200, 3,300 people or so. We're all over Trustpilot. We've got the most 5-star reviews. The difference between us and everyone else is we exclusively represent the debtor. The rest of the industry, they're looking out for the creditors, not because they're mean or they're out to hurt the debtor. It's just it's the nature of the beast. Of course, they'll say no, we're neutral. No, nobody's neutral. There's no such thing. So that's our job. So my job is I like to jokingly say to people, my job is to keep you from shooting yourself in the foot and then reloading. So that's really the thing. And we do whatever we can to help, and we don't just stop for the status quo. We're doing everything we can to legitimately, legally, maximize the benefit for the debtor and protect assets as well.
And I want to ask a final question. If somebody go through this any program like consumer or bankruptcy, how soon they can build a credit and go back to their normal life?
So with a proposal, you can start to rebuild credit once the proposal passes. So your typical proposal takes 60 days to pass, 45 days voting, 15 court approval. Unless there's a counter offer, you're good. You can start rebuilding. Now, how fast does it rebuild? Well, that depends on the person's situation and so forth. The best way to think of credit rebuilding in a proposal is it's kind of like swimming against the tide. You can start swimming. A lot of people think they can't do anything until they're out. That's not true. You start rebuilding right away, but you're swimming as hard as you can, but there's some guy pushing back on you. So you'll move, but you move slowly. Still, that's a good thing because 50% of your score is payment history. You want to start building that up no matter what. Now, when you get a proposal, there's no more tides. You can go a lot faster. Even though it's still on your record, it's not hurting your score anymore. So I've seen people get back into the mid to high 600s in 18 months. Doesn't happen a lot. Okay. Typically you want to get out of the proposal, and then you're looking at 24, 36 months. If you're in the proposal for the full 5 years, it's hard to really get into a high position like beyond 650, 660 as long as you're in the proposal because of the weight pushing down on it. Bankruptcy, you can't even begin to rebuild until you're out of bankruptcy. That's 9, 21, 24, 36 months, depending on whether it's your first bankruptcy and how much money you make. Okay. Once you're out, you can start to rebuild, but that tide, that weight is on you for another 6 years, unless it's a second bankruptcy, then it's 14 years. So much harder. Like I tell people, ironically, credit's like your hair, not mine, yours. Okay. If Gamini wakes up tomorrow and looks like me, well, he probably just filed the proposal, but it will grow back. Okay. Whereas cash is that you wake up tomorrow and your finger's missing. Sorry.
So what you're saying is, if you're in a situation, don't procrastinate, get professional help and take decision soon.
Yeah, well, I guess if it weren't for procrastination and denial, I'd be out of business. So procrastinate a little. But what I would say is definitely seek professional help, because number one, your friends don't know, your family doesn't know, and that's not an insult. They don't know because nobody thinks about this stuff. It's a grudge purchase. But also seek the right professional. Because I've seen people, well, my doctor said, your doctor? Like, look, you need an antibiotic. Go to your doctor. Like, do I give you medical advice? It's astonishing. Financial advisors come up with, I love financial advisors. Wonderful. Mutual funds, life insurance, stuff. Do it. It's wonderful. They don't know jack squat about debt. Why? Because no one trained them. So definitely seek professional help. Don't go in alone, because when you enter the trustee's office, trustees are decent enough people, but they are incentivized, and they not only they are required to look after the creditor's needs, to act as a fiduciary. And again, they'll say, no, we're referees. They're referees being paid by the home team. And I'll go toe to toe with them for that one. It's true. It's true. You can't take both sides. Okay?
Right. Yeah. But they're fiduciary. They're fiduciary duty. Okay. Yeah, Zach, I think I really enjoy having this session with you. I know that the people who are listening to you learn a lot, and the way that you are teaching, sharing, and explaining, I think it makes sense. And I think we should do another session soon.
Anytime you wish, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zach. Okay. Ciao.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.